a request for a king was in last week's lesson. Okay? And so now he's warning Israel about their king. Why did the nation of Israel, there were three main reasons that they gave, but why did the nation of Israel want a king anyway? Okay, yes. One of the reasons was because they wanted to be like the nations around them. What's another reason? Anybody remember? Was Samuel a good man? Samuel was a good man. Okay, but there was a problem with Samuel. He was getting old, wasn't he? And guys, guess what? You got to make plans. You know, one of these days, our older members are not going to be here, and our older leaders are going to have to step down. They'll die, whatever, and there needs to be individuals to take their place. And were there individuals to take Samuel's place? Oh yes, there were. Who were they? His sons, Joel and Abiah. And they were evil men, weren't they? Men who perverted judgment. And the nation of Israel didn't want those evil sons ruling over them, so they desire to have a king. And true or false, God grants their request. True. True. But before He grants their request, He tells Samuel that I want you to show them the blank of their king. What's that blank? The manner of the king. Okay? Guys, there was going to be a style, there was going to be a quality, there was going to be an approach that the king would have, and they needed to understand the approach that this new king is going to take over the nation of Israel. And that's the section where we find ourselves, aren't we? Samuel has been given this job of telling them about this new king and what he's going to be like, and it's going to be tough, okay? We begin with an outline. Who wants to give their outline of this particular text? All right, Jane, way back there.
The king will take.
Oh, the king will take.
The Lord will not help.
Oh, the Lord will not help. We want a king?
King it is.
I like it. That's a simple outline, isn't it? I do like it, okay? All right, Kevin?
Kings rule, Israel wars, Israel refuses, Samuel repeats.
Oh, man, there's a good one. Got those R's going on, okay? They just roll off your tongue, won't they? Okay, anybody else want to give one? All right, way back there. The reign of power. Ooh, that's good. The outcry of Israel. The hope and then the fear. Good stuff. All right. I just put these down for mine. The appointments of the king. Number 2. The agony of the people. Number 3. The aspiration of the people. And then lastly, the approval from God. Okay, so 4 points in this particular section. True or false? And Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked him a king. Folks, that's true. That is a direct quote of 1 Samuel 8, verse 10. Is it not true? Who was, in his relationship to God, who was Samuel? What positions did he hold? He was a judge of Israel. What else? He was a prophet of the Almighty God. Anything else that he did? He was a priest of Israel as well. Okay? Now, when he goes before the people and he speaks this message from God to them, what role is he fulfilling? Yes, he is fulfilling the office of a prophet. Folks, a prophet was nothing more than a spokesman for God. That's the simple definition. Now, the difference between a prophet and a preacher is that a prophet could do what? He could foretell the future. He had that ability to look into the future and foretell the future. Whereas a preacher today, even though he's a spokesman for God, he is referred to in the New Testament as a man of God. which was the same description that a prophet was given in the Old Testament. The difference is we cannot predict the future because the age of the miraculous has ceased, has it not? So here Samuel is standing before the people, and he is going to tell them what God has authorized him to tell. Okay, folks, that is the job of a prophet, is it not? To be faithful, to tell people exactly what God wants them to know. True or false? Do you think that Samuel may have feared a little bit what the people might have to say about what he's going to tell them? Okay. Has Samuel been given some difficult things to talk about as a prophet? Do you remember when he was just a little child in the temple and the very first time God appeared unto him and gave him a revelation? Who was that all about? Eli, and how Eli hadn't been faithful and God was going to rip the high priesthood from him, didn't he? Okay, so boy, that's a wonderful message to have to tell the high priest. And now he's got another difficult message to proclaim, right? Oh, you want a king? Well, let me tell you about this king. Okay, let me tell you the kind of person he's going to be and the kind of reign that he's going to bring you under. Folks, that's a pretty tough position to be in as a prophet. So sometimes the messages that prophets and men of God have to present are not easy ones, are they? Okay, and we see that all the way through history. Number three. Who is the first group of people that Samuel tells will be taken by the king? The sons. Wow. And he said, "This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons." There you go. He will take your sons. Folks, it doesn't say he will ask for your sons. The text says he will what? He will take your sons. He's the what? He's the king. He's the monarch. He's the authority. He's the power. And he will take your sons. I wrote down a couple of things about sons. Okay, number one, sons are children. And guess what? Children are precious to their parents, aren't they? And guess what this king's going to do? He's just going to take them. Secondly, sons oftentimes, especially in those days, were a vital part of that immediate family, weren't they? Okay? It's not like it is today, folks. We live in a very transient, mobile society, right? Israel was a very small nation, and guess what they didn't do? They didn't fellowship with the nations round about, or they weren't supposed to fellowship with the nations round about them, okay? So they didn't go out and just, they didn't graduate as children from college and then go off and leave their parents. Where did they stay? They stayed at home. They lived probably on the same land. And what did they help mom and dad do? Oh yeah, they helped run the farm, bring in the crops, and things of that nature, didn't they? Well, guess what? What if you've got two sons as a parent, and these sons are 18, 20, 25 years old, and they've been helping you for the last 5, 6, 8, 10 years of their lives, and now all of a sudden you get a king, and what does the king do? Sorry, I need your boys. What's going to happen to your farm? Folks, it's about to get bad. Okay? It's going to cause major hardship on that family to lose sons. Okay? Folks, also, sons were the ones who were supposed to carry on the father's what? His legacy and his name, were they not? Sons are supposed to marry, have children, have boys who will what? Keep the family name going. Now who's got a hold of them? The king does. Now, the problem with it is the positions into which he's going to put these boys. Right? You see these positions that he's going to put these men in, some of them are going to be very dangerous positions. And guess what? Some of them will never marry. Some of them will never bear children for their parents. Okay? Because the king has charge of them, doesn't he? So that was the very first group of individuals. What are the three major positions the son will be expected to fulfill by the king? Number one, horseman. Number two, okay. I've broke them down into three big sections. Number one, military. Okay? And he mentions 2 or 3 different military positions, does he not? Number 2, agriculture. And number 3, production. Okay, listen to what the text says. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, who shall run before his chariots. And he will appoint him captains over thousands and captains over 50s. And he will set them to ear his ground, and to reap his harvest, and to make instruments of war and instruments for his chariots. So you've got military personnel, you've got agricultural personnel, and you've got production people. Okay? Similar to society today, is it not? Okay? But who's going to make the decision as to who goes where? The king does, right? Okay? The king's going to make that position. What positions would they hold in the military? Number 1, they would be for his chariots, folks. A king doesn't go out to battle unless there are what? Other chariots surrounding him. Okay? They're going to be there for his what? For his protection and for his well-being. Okay? Usually there could be up to 3 to 6 chariots that would surround that king when he went out to battle. Okay? Because who do you not want to die? You don't want the king to die. You know? Better for your son to die than the king. Isn't that right? Secondly, to be his what? His horsemen. Okay? What do we call those kind of people? Horsemen. The cavalry, yes. So he's going to have a cavalry that he has as well. And then there's going to be some that do what? Run before the chariot. Okay, run before the chariot. Okay, armed military men running before the chariot. Some will be placed as captains over thousands, folks. That was probably one of the highest ranking positions that you could have if you were placed over thousands, okay? And then the smallest unit was captains over what? 50s, okay? Captains over 50s. So he says, basically what he's saying is they could be leaders anywhere from the greatest in rank to what? To the lowest in rank within the king's military. And lastly, well, I'm sorry, turn over to 1 Kings chapter 5. 1 Kings chapter 5. Somebody read 13 through 16 for me. 1 Kings 5, 13 through 16.
Then King Solomon raised up a labor force out of all Israel. And the labor force was 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month in ships. They were 1 month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. Adoniram was in charge of the labor force. Solomon had 70,000 who carried burdens and 80,000 who quarried stones and mountains, besides 3,300 from the chief of Solomon's deputies who supervised the people who labored in the work.
Guys, just go back home tonight and just read that passage 2 or 3 times and do the math on the numbers. Okay? We're not talking about 5 or 10. We're not talking about 100. We're talking about what? We're talking about thousands of Israelites, okay, that are going to be appointed over this work. I bet you almost every home experienced the loss of a family member, don't you? All because they wanted what? A king. Now these are just the what? These are just the boys. These are just the sons. How?
Yeah, something that just dawned on me. Since Israel is now getting the first king, what handbook is that guy going to use to say, oh, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, whatever? Obviously, Solomon, well, Samuel taught him what could happen. But who's going to tell this king that he can do it?
Nobody. From the standpoint, if a king wanted to do something as the authority, now, he was supposed to be under the will of God. Okay, when you go back to Deuteronomy, the 17th chapter, when God predicted a king, there were certain stipulations that God placed upon this king in that chapter. Okay, but, you know, once a king becomes a king, you know, sometimes he doesn't care about the authority of God, does he? And he will do whatever he wants. I'm king. I'm over everything. I'll do whatever I want to do. And there are some extremely wicked kings that could rule. But as far as what he needed in order to expand his kingdom, to develop his kingdom, guess what? There was no end to that. Okay, and Solomon's kingdom was one of the biggest. Okay, in fact, it was the biggest of all the kingdoms of the kings. And he just warning them. He's going to take your what? Your son. Guess how many I've got? One. That's all I got. One son. And then all of a sudden, guess what? King comes along. He gets jerked out of my house to go serve the king. Bye, son. Let me ask you this. Do they sometimes take children younger than 18 or 20? Yes. Oh, yeah. Folks, they take those kids sometime 10, 12, 14 years old in order to do what to them? Train them and get them ready to serve when the time came. You don't know when, you don't know what age that little one's going to be taken from you. Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. You're exactly right. Okay. What are the two statements found in the Scripture that talk about farming? Yeah, the King James says, ear the ground. Okay? To ear the ground. You don't hear that very often. That little word ear there means to scratch, thus to plow. It also means to cut into. When you plow the ground, what do? Cut into the ground, don't you? So it's that word that means to scratch or cut into. And what's the second thing they're going to do? Reap the harvest. Guys, who are they farming for? Yeah, they're not farming for themselves anymore. They're farming for who? The king. Go sometime and read about Solomon's daily provisions. Okay? His daily provisions at his table. Guys, it is unbelievable what was required at his table every day. Okay? And he had to feed who? Had to feed his military, didn't he? He'd have to feed his farmers, wouldn't he? Oh, mercy. Emily said you got to feed them wives. Yeah, them women eat, boy. Solomon especially, you would have 1,000 of them babies. You got to have a table, you got to have a spread, don't you? Y'all make me laugh sometime. Unbelievable. Okay. What were they going to be manufacturing, folks? Yes, instruments of war and instruments for his chariots. Okay, guys, this is going to be a big undertaking. Just to lose your son, wouldn't that be enough? But it doesn't stop there. Who is the second group that would be taken from them? The daughters. Are you kidding? And he will take your daughters to be confectionaries and to be cooks and to be bakers. Got another question. Are daughters important in a house? I got an enthusiastic yeah down here by Debbie. Yeah, they're important. As important as them old boys. Okay. Guys, girls, they add a tenderness. They add an affection. They add kind of a soft touch to a home, don't they? Most of the time. Now, I know there's some that are pretty rough nuts, but most of the time they're the tender side of the house, okay? The boys the tough side. What else do girls do in homes? Yeah, guys, most of the time they were the cooks, weren't they? Okay, the boys would go out in the fields. They'd work hard in the fields, and girls would rise with their moms, help prepare breakfast, help prepare lunch, help prepare dinner for the night. They were valuable. Now all of a sudden, you got one girl and you got one son. They're both gone. You can't farm the farm, and you no longer have a what? You no longer have a cook. You don't have a helper in the home anymore. They're gone. Okay. What else were girls? Clean, sew. Okay, yep, they did those, just the home jobs, okay? But folks, oftentimes girls were, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but girls were used for profitability for families, okay? Back then, you didn't always get to choose who you married. What did they do? They arranged marriages. And you arranged marriages many times so that it would benefit what? Benefit your household, right? If you could marry the right individual to your son or to your daughter, it might move you up a little bit as far as your social standing is concerned. Now you don't have a son to do that with, and you don't have a daughter to marry to someone that could be profitable to your family. There's a lot of ways that these households are going to get harmed by this king. Okay? Oh yeah, it still happens, doesn't it? Absolutely, you're right. It sure does. What 3 positions would these women have? Confectionaries, cooks, and bakers. Okay? Confectionery. Did anybody look that up? Yeah, this is a woman who mixes up and makes female parfume. Okay? Perfume. You didn't even know I could talk like that, did you? The only other word that I know like that is target. Okay? The Bible's pretty racist, isn't it? The boys get to go to war, and the girls have to do what? Cook and bake and make parfum. Okay? Isn't that something? I find it interesting that, folks, God understands the roles of men and women, and He understands the makeup of men and women, and that men and women are what? They are different. Okay? And they serve different functions and different purposes. But let me tell you something. If I'm a worker in the field, I can't wait to get home to what? A good meal, man. You know that? Mama's sick, sister's sick, and you got to go eat leftovers or something? Man, no. You want that good stuff on the foot. God has put roles in society for a reason, folks. Okay? And He's made us different for a reason. And we all serve our purposes and we all serve our functions. And we just need to understand that, and especially in our society where we're really trying to blur the lines between male and female, or we're trying to broaden the lines into hundreds of different genders. I think now there's about 60 or 70 different genders they say they've identified. Just blows your mind. Blows your mind. Samuel warns them that the king would take the best of 3 things and give them to his servants. What are they? Fields, vineyards, and their olive yards. And he will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. Wow, guys. It's pretty powerful. What were the things that they used to make a living back then? Fields for cattle, right? And other animals. And then they had what? Vineyards, grapes, okay? For both grapes and for the juice of the grape. And then what else? Olive trees, olive yards, right? Folks, olives were very profitable. Still are over in Greece and in that area of the country, okay? Just unbelievable. Notice the text says, He will take the best of them. He will not take that which does not produce. He will take the most productive things they have. Guys, their sons are gone. Their daughters are gone. What else is gone? Their means of making a good living anymore is gone, right? He may have 2 or 3 different fields, and one of them is just kind of nasty, and maybe it's kind of wet and doesn't produce well. Well, guess what? You can have that one. But he wants these 2 good ones over here for himself, right? It's unbelievable. And guys, if the king wanted them, guess what? He took them. What else would the king take 1/10 of and give to his officers and servants? Okay, and he will take 1/10 of your seed and of your vineyards and give them to his officers and to his servants. Folks, this is their own personal stuff. Now, let me make a distinction, okay? He comes in, he sees you got 3 fields, right? 2 produce great, 1 is kind of junky. So he gives you the what? The junky field, right? He takes your 2, but you still have 1, so you feel pretty good. Except what? Well, you don't, but I'm going to take 1/10 of your seed that you're going to use to sow your field. And then when you produce, guess what I'm going to take? I'm going to take a tenth of all you produce. He's just clipped off 20% of what you're going to bring in, isn't he? He's taking a tenth of your seed and a tenth of what you produce. Unbelievable. Okay? He's got something, doesn't he? He's got some officers too, I'll guarantee you. What 4 things will be taken and put to work? Men servants, maid servants, goodliest young men, and the asses or donkeys, right? The goodliest young men. Folks, the word goodliest means the good. Brown, Driver, and Briggs, listen to their description. The good, the pleasant, the excellent, the rich, the valuable in estimation, of good understanding, kind, ethically right. Now you get out here and you start evaluating young people, and guess what? There's some good ones and there's some ain't so good ones. Right? You know? There's some young men and women who are ethically corrupt and vile, morally vile, right? They're ugly. They're not healthy. They may be handicapped, and I'm not throwing them into the same category, but handicapped folks to them. Folks, that was a useless person. Guess what he took? He took all the good ones. That's what he's saying. Okay? If there's anything that devalues this individual, he's not intelligent enough, he doesn't look good enough, okay? He's not healthy enough, he's got a deformity or a handicap, you can keep that one. But guess what the king's going to take? The goodliest. I'm taking the best of all the young people in the land. Wow. Just unbelievable. He will take a tenth of your blank. Sheep, 1 Samuel 8, verse 17. What would be their position before the king? Servants. Wow. And ye shall be his servants. Strong says a servant. It's translated a bondman or bondservant in other places in the Old Testament. Brown, Driver, and Briggs says a slave, a servant, a subject. Guys, you now belong to whom? The king. You are at his beck and call. Okay? Whatever he wants of you, guess what? He gets. Now think about that. I've got your what? Sons. I've got your daughters. I've got your best land. I've got a tenth of everything that you are going to produce. I'm going to take any servants, maid servants, men servants, goodly young men. I'm going to take your donkeys. I'm going to take your sheep. What's left? Folks, you don't have much left. You've got the scraps. You've got the worthless. You've got the no good stuff. Okay? And the king has it all, and you're still just his what? Just his old servant. Wow. Hey, who? Yes, sir.
You know, some of this, you know, is just like taxation today. We have to pay taxes, and 10%, 20% isn't a big deal. But what I'm trying to get my head around is when they would, you know, take the children. Okay, that wouldn't be from every family, right? Because then it would just be too overwhelming to manage. I mean, you know, what percentage of the total population was taken? And I'm going to use this word captivity because I can't think of another word.
As much as he wanted. You know,
But we don't know how much that is.
it doesn't mean that, you know, he's not going to let them marry, you know. It's just they're taken out of your home. You're going to be a captain. I'll find a woman for you. And they'll produce, you know, they'll have to, but all of a sudden you raise a what? You raise an aristocracy, don't you? You know, you got your king, and then you got your captains, you got, you know, all these people who serve in those top official positions, okay? And some that, you know, once they get you as confectionaries on the farm, right? You're cooking for the men, and you got these other guys that have come from one of the tribes, and they're working on the farm. Well, they can intermarry and have children and stuff, but the point is what? They're at The king's beck and call. No longer is anything what? Yours. Absolutely. Absolutely, they're like that. We have numerous societies like that. Like you said, when they say, I'm going to take it. See, back then, they didn't have coins and dollars and all of that stuff. How did they barter?
That's why the United States is the envy of the world.
Absolutely. And it's, but the way they bartered were with what? Sheep, goats, produce, things of that nature. Okay? And the government just comes in and takes that from you. And that's what he's warning about. The government can just take this stuff from you. And he is going to take this stuff from you. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And so it's going to be pretty tough. Notice 1 Samuel 8, verse 18, if you don't think it's going to get tough. And ye shall cry out in that day, because your king, which ye shall have chosen you. Guys, you don't always want what you ask for. You know that? You see, they only saw what? They only saw the good part of this king. He'll go out and fight our wars for us, and we'll be like the nations round about us. Okay? And they only saw the good of the king. And God's trying to show them the manner of the king, right? The style of the king. And they couldn't look down the road far enough and see what the end was. Okay? And the end is going to be what? Horrible. Horrible enough that the Bible says that they would do what? Cry out to the Lord. That word cry out means this, guys. To shriek from anguish or danger. To cry out, call out for help. The very thing they wanted, they are now what? Rejecting and crying out over. You see, there's sometimes we think we want things, and when we get them, they aren't what we want. I want a dog. Good. So Mom and Daddy go get you a dog. But guess what you don't want? You don't want to feed him every day. You don't want to take him out for walks. You don't want to clean up his poop. You don't want to take care of him when he's sick. You don't want to take him to the vet and pay the bills. Right? But you wanted a little dog because he was so precious. Vic don't want no dog. Okay, now you can have your, I'm not saying anything about you who have dogs. Vic don't want no dog. I can see down the end. Okay, Jeannie? All the time. Absolutely, yeah. I got some lessons down here. They wanted a government to be their keeper rather than who? Rather than God. That's exactly what they want. Okay? You see, God said they haven't rejected Samuel, they've rejected me. And now, instead of God providing, instead of God taking care of them, they want a who to do that? We want the government. We want a king to do that for us. Okay, so that's what they put in place. And what they found out is man can be more oppressive than God. The very thing they desired is the thing that now causes them anguish to the point they cry out for God's help. However, what does God say? How would God respond? And the Lord will not hear your cry in that day. Man. True or false? God had been a good God to them. Guys, He'd been a great God to them. He brought them into a land that He described as flowing with what? Milk and honey. And guys, if you go back to the book of Deuteronomy and you read about God's blessings and cursings to the nation of Israel, go back and read the blessings. If you'll obey me, here are the blessings. Go back and read them. It's unbelievable. Okay? The blessings that would come to this people if they would just obey God. Now the problem was they didn't always what? Obey God, and that brought the what? The cursings. But if they had obeyed God, they would have been the most profitable, they would have been the most rich, they would have been the most lavish people in all the world if they would have just obeyed God. And now what are they doing? They're rejecting God for a man to rule over them. God would not rescue them from their evil choices, folks. And here's a lesson. There are times when people must, and I underscore that, must learn from the consequences of their choices. You know that? Parents have had to go through that sometime, haven't they? You get a child grows up, and the child isn't responsible. Okay? And the child is constantly what? Calling mom, calling dad. Can I have this? Can I have that? I need payment on a car. I need food. I can't pay this bill. I can't do this. Will you rescue me? Can I come back home for a little while? And you know what mom and dad finally have to do? It's over. I'm not doing this anymore. Okay? I've told you and I've told you and I've told you, here's the way to live, here's what you need to be doing, and you're not listening to me. Folks, what God is saying is this. Right now, I'm giving you a warning about the manner of king that you're asking for. And if you still choose that, there's going to come a day when you cry out to me in anguish, and guess what? I will not hear. That's scary, isn't it? Absolutely. True or false? This warning convinced the people that they did not want a king. False. False. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, "Nay, but we will have a king over us." Wow. Long ago, I heard a sermon, and it was entitled this: "You just can't warn some people." That was the title of the sermon. Just can't warn them. You tell them what's coming. You tell them what the consequences are. You tell them what the result is of such and such behavior, such and such decisions. And guess what? They could care less. I'm going to do what I want to do. And that's where the nation of Israel is. They'll reject facts. Their minds are blinded to reality. The immediate desires are more important than the consequences of their decisions. No. It happens today, right? Preachers preach lessons straight from the Word of God. I don't care what that preacher says. I'll do what I want to do. Give me a king. Right? People do it all the time. Reject God. Okay? And it's amazing. What are the three reasons they give for still desiring a king? They say this, that we also may be like all the nations. That's conformity, folks. Number two, that our king may judge us. What they didn't realize is that corruption can develop in a monarchy just as easily as it developed among Samuel's sons and Eli's sons. To go out before us and fight our battles. But what they failed to remember is when you go out and fight battles, there's casualties, aren't there? Guys, here's what's amazing about this chapter. If you go back and you read chapter 7, especially verse 10, had God just delivered them out of the hand of the Philistines? Yes? He had, hadn't he? How did he do it? How many died? 0. None of the Israelites died because God thundered with a great thunder. And guess what happened? He defeated the enemy. Not one Israelite died in that battle. Jericho, how many Israelites died at Jericho? 0. None. And the whole city was captured. Folks, if you have God fighting for you, guess what? You don't have to die. You got a king fighting for you, and guess what? There are going to be a lot of casualties. Can't there? Tons of casualties. They forgot all of that. What did Samuel do with the reply by the people? And Samuel heard all the words of the people and rehearsed them in the ears of God. Wow. Samuel reported to God all that the people had said. Here's what I'm thinking. You think Samuel was disappointed that day? Remember we said last week that when Samuel was supposed to go make this report, it's not just a one-time report, right? He told these things to them over and over and over and over and over again, trying to get them to understand. Over and over and over. He kept saying it. And finally they just said what? Hush, nay, you be quiet, we want a king. Can you imagine how disappointing Samuel was that day, he must have thought the people would have rationale and see the problems that would arise from their request. But they what? Did not. And the Lord said unto Samuel, blank unto their voice, and make them a king. Man, does it still shock you?
It does. You know, one thing that shocked me is when you're talking about them being slaves, and they already had been slaves in Egypt and everything. It's like you really want to repeat that whole scenario again.
I know. Unbelievable. And guys, even if you go all the way back to Joseph, when Joseph became king over Egypt, okay, and things got bad in Egypt, guess what Joseph did? Joseph took everything from those people. The minute they came to Joseph wanting those rations, Joseph said, fine, give me your sons. Fine, give me your daughters. Fine, give me your land. Fine, give me your animals. And you see, there's payment for those kind of things. That stuff doesn't come what? Free. You eventually become what? Enslaved if you're not careful. And that was what's going to happen. And Samuel, what did Samuel exhort the men of Israel to do after this meeting? Go ye every man unto his city. Guess what? The decision was final. And guess what was about to happen, folks? God was going to carry out their request. And it was going to come soon and hard. You know that? Be careful what you ask for. And remember, some people just can't be what? Warned.